Hello and welcome to A Celtic World, the Celtic YouTube channel and podcast for Celtic fans all around the world. So wherever you are on this big green planet, you're all very welcome here to talk about the Celtic, except for that twat who phoned into Super Scoreboard and said he left the game at half-time on the weekend. So he's most certainly not welcome. So you might notice, your regular viewers will notice that Gav's not here tonight. So I'm going to be your host. And obviously, with Gav not being around, it's going to be slightly less polished than usual. But we'll get by and have a good show nonetheless. So, fortunately for me, I'm joined by two stalwarts of Celtic media, Celtic social media. And first of all, I'll say hello to David in Bangkok. How you doing, David?
Hi, Stephen. How's things? All good here?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Great to have you on. Also joined from the beautiful borders of Scotland by John White. Thankfully back for the second time, so we didn't do anything to annoy you the first time, John. So you're very welcome back on. And how are you doing?
I'm fantastic. It's a great privilege to be back again. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no worries. So what we're going to talk about tonight, we'll just flash that up just now. So we're going to talk about the Ross County game. Ross County being the latest team to get hammered by the Celtic steamroller. We're going to ask the question that's been asked by a lot of people, mostly not Celtic fans, and certainly not Celtic fans of our age. Are we bored winning? Then we're going to talk about the Aberdeen game coming up on Wednesday night or Thursday morning, if you're in these parts, for myself and David are living. And then we'll talk about what it means for the league title if we win that game, and basically, is it more or less over? So I will just bring up the usual ticker and remind everybody we're quite a new podcast, quite a new YouTube show. So if you like what you hear, please feel free to subscribe, as it gives us a lot of help with getting it done. Okay, so straight into it. We'll talk about the Ross County game, and first thing we'll talk about is the starting 11. So massive changes from the game against Bruges or Brugge, as we're told we need to say these days. So I'll maybe go to you first, John. What was your first initial take when you seen the starting lineup?
I thought it was very brave, but very necessary by Brendanrodgers. The result was a testament to the virtues of squad rotation when you've got a decent squad. I think the players who came in were fantastic, particularly in my view, Scales and McCowan. They slotted in seamlessly. And this is a squad, not just a team, but this is a squad that really has a serious level of togetherness and connectedness. The way they play, the way the cohesion maintains after, let's be honest, I thought the Club Bruges game was a disappointment based on the RB Leipzig performance, even though it was a draw. Probably a few years ago, we'd be saying the Bruges result was a great result. This just shows how far Celtic have progressed in the last year. So yeah, I was surprised, but I wasn't surprised, if that makes any sense. I think Rodgers has Celtic have a very heavy Christmas schedule coming up, multiple games within days of each other. So he has to manage the recovery and the rest and the vibrancy of the squad. But it worked very well against Ross County. No disrespect to Ross County, Celtic would always be expected to beat Ross County, home and away. But as he said in his post-match interview, this time last year we were getting booed off the pitch against Ross County. So I think Rodgers has really shone through as a guy who's taken the licks when he came back. A lot of the fans were disquieted by his return. I have to put my hand up. I was one of them, and I'm now a fan. I think he's done a fantastic job, and more power to him. I think we can all look forward with hope. But it was an interesting. I think the Liam Scales Austin Trusty dilemma is a headache for Rodgers at this juncture. Both are 26. Both are internationalists, which means both would demand game time. So we'll see how he deals with those two guys going forward in terms of how they feel about their value and their worth and their the kind of time they get on the pitch going forward. It seems that Austin Trusty is the pick when it comes to Champions League games at this juncture. So who knows what's happening in training behind the scenes? But my personal opinion, I prefer Liam Scales. I think he has more physicality, and he's also very good on the ball as much as Austin Trusty.
Yeah, we'll touch a bit on Liam Scales in a bit when we talk about the goals in the game. But I'll go to you, David, now. Any surprises from that team lineup there? Maybe a bit surprised to see Callum McGregor still in there, being one of the elder statesmen of the team. Do you think he was maybe due a rest?
No, for me, I think it worked quite well. We already rotated McCowan and Bernardo, so I think to rotate all three would have been a challenge. I think when we looked at the Falkirk game, when we had 6 reserves, and that didn't go so well. But for me, the big difference was that we had Alistair Johnson back, we had Carter Vickers back, whereas against Falkirk we were playing pretty much an unrecognisable, back four. But I do think it was a risk worth taking, especially when looking at the statistics. Ross County has scored the fewest number of goals in the league, probably not far behind Rangers. And they had scored the fewest number of goals. So in terms of the defence, I think it was a risk worth taking. But as John said, I think our squad depth is unlike anything I can actually remember. We could have taken McGregor, McCowan, Bernardo, Hatate. We could have taken any of them, really. So we've ended up with 5 or 6 changes to the Bruges game, and then in the second half we've brought on Ralston, we've brought on other people, so like Yang, etc. So I mean our squad depth is just fantastic just now, and I think it was if he was going to rotate the team, I think this had to be the game when he did it, because I would like to see, when we talk about the Aberdeen game, I would like to see us show the respect to Aberdeen by having our strongest team starting.
100%.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. Any surprises? Well, maybe not a surprise, but no sign of Palmer again in the matchday squad. John, do you think that's a sign that Palmer's almost done, and but Rodgers has just had enough of him?
100%. I think there's always going to be one player in the squad who is unhappy, at least one. And that unhappiness could spread demoralisation throughout the squad. So I think it's obviously clear that Palmer's day is done, and the sooner he goes, the better, given where we are in terms of maintaining the harmony of the team and how they're playing on the pitch. As I said earlier, they're playing with wonderful togetherness. I would say the Celtic team, the only team that's matching Celtic with this level of togetherness and harmony is Liverpool at this juncture in Britain. So they need to maintain that going forward. So yeah, I think you're right. I think it's over for him at Celtic.
Yeah, there's a lot of people having their say in the comments about this. There was one Monty earlier on saying he prefers Trusty to Scales, and that's fair enough. It's all about opinions. Smell the glove there, saying it's great having 3 quality centre halves now fighting for 2 places. Next season I want 4 fighting for 2. Competition is vital. And I think, David, that's probably the big difference from last year, isn't it? That we do have genuine competition for places.
Yeah, for sure. I think all over the pitch. We've not seen Sini Salo as yet, but hopefully, Schmeichel keeps fit. I think there is a drop off when we come to some of our second players. I mean, I think there's a big drop off from Johnson to Ralston, with the best will in the world. Valle is a much better option than Taylor, which we've known for quite some time. Kyogo is much better, I think, than Idah. Although I thought Idah had a fabulous game. I think his touch was actually a lot better. So yeah, overall across the pitch, and even if Kyogo or Idah were injured, we've got so many different goal scorers across the pitch. We've got the top 4 goal scorers in the Scottish Premier League just now, and 5 out of the top 10. So in terms of someone being injured, I mean, One of the challenges last year, in my opinion, the reason the league was so close was that Hatate was injured for 3 or 4 months. I mean, Hatate just makes a huge difference to everything that we do. And I think his, him not being available for large parts of last year, was undeniably a massive reason why the league was so close.
Mm-hmm. Can I just say on that? I think you're absolutely right, David, when it comes to competition for places. But I think the balance is difficult when you have players who consider themselves to be at the peak of their careers in their early to mid-20s, and they're deemed to be squad players. That's where the discordant notes can come in. It's different if it's an older player who's a veteran who accepts that he's no longer going to be playing every game or most games. And I think my worry with the squad, and it's a marginal worry given where we are in terms of how we're playing, is that we have so many players who are in the peak of their prime, physical primes in their mid-20s, who are vying for the same places. And that's where I think Rodgers has to strike that balance. How does he keep all these guys happy? Because at that age, at that time of your career, you want to be playing. So we'll see how it goes, how things progress going forward beyond the Christmas period and into the business end of the season. And when these players think about their futures in terms of, am I getting enough time on the pitch? Am I valued enough, etc.? That's my only concern right now. It's a marginal concern, but I think it is a concern.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll dive into the game, have a chat about it. So we've talked about the lineup, we've talked about the bench. Let's have a chat about the goals, and certainly there was plenty of them to talk about. So the first goal after 10 minutes, a corner from the right-hand side swung in by McCowan, and Liam Scales holds off his defender, gets a great glancing header on it. I think we've already mentioned Scales' physical presence. And I think that's shown up well. And I think he's our main attacking threat from headers, as he's shown already this season. John, what's your take on that?
Absolutely agree. It was a classic goal. Good forward play, good inter-passing, inter-penetration between the different parts of the squad. I like how Liam Scales forces himself forward. I really like Liam Scales. I think it was a great goal. It was a great start. And I think it allayed a lot of some of the fans might have had some kind of trepidation because of the Club Brugge game, how it would impact the players going forward on a Saturday. And I think there was a huge sense of relief that it was, normal service was resumed. So it was a great goal at a great time in the match.
Yeah, and David, he held off the defender really, really well to create the space, and he made a really good near post run. So fabulous goal from Scales.
Yeah, for sure. I think he definitely does add that attacking threat. I think also fair plays to McCowan. His the way he put the ball in. I mean, you normally think how difficult can it be, but how many times do we do those daft wee short corners, and how many times do we sort of aimlessly sort of lob the ball into the near or front post? I mean, this was a ball that was hitting at pace. Clearly, something that's been practiced time and time again. And we've seen with Scales that he attacks the front post. It's not just static waiting for the ball to come to him. So the ball's coming at pace. He's anticipated. And, he's done that several times this season. I mean, I really like Scales. I think that it's one of those difficult decisions. Personally, I think Trusty adds a little bit more for the big games with his speed. But I've got absolutely no problems. I mean, you can see that I think 2 of the games that we played in the Champions League, Scales was one of the defenders of the tournament. So, I don't have any, huge concerns with Scales playing. But I just think personally that Rusty is, just marginally better. But it was a great goal, and I think it shows you, the strengths. And then when you come to the second goal, and you see when Scales turns into Beckenbauer, for his chipped pass, it does bring a lot to the team.
I got the impression that Scales played against Ross County with something to prove, and that was a great key in his performance. He really did go out of his way to prove something to himself and to the manager, not in a bad way, not in a kind of aggressive way or acrimonious way, that he is a great player. So again, I'm contradicting that's a testament to the powers of competition for places. He went out to take his chance to prove that he is there and he is valuable and he can do the job and he can be trusted on the pitch when it comes to the big moments.
Yeah, just talking about the corners again for a minute. I know you were talking about the delivery from McCowan, and I think also one of the big differences from last season is deliveries from corners. We now have McCowan, who puts a great ball in. We have Arnie Engels, who puts a great ball in, and Paulo Bernardo. So we've got three options for corners now, all swinging in really good deliveries. And I think, off the top of my head, we must have scored 5 or 6 goals from corners already this season. I don't have the stats to hand, but I'm pretty sure that would be probably more than we scored in the whole of last season from corners, when we didn't really look as if we had a great threat in the opposition box. So I think we're really blessed to have 3 players all with a great delivery on them.
And other people that are able to take advantage of that in the box.
Yeah. When it comes to corners, you need to have options. You can't be one-dimensional with the same drills. So I think Rodgers has worked and his team have worked on giving different options at corners, especially when you're playing elite teams in the Champions League, because they'll be able to obviously read what you're doing and counteract it easily. You need physicality, you need deft touch, you need intelligence when it comes to corners. You need to mix it up. So obviously Ross County is not the template as to how effective your corners are. Let's be honest, no disrespect to Ross County. So the upcoming European game against Zagreb, the European games we've had, it shows Celtic have a multiplicity of options, and that can only be good for the team going forward. And it keeps the fans happy because they think, that there's always the option of scoring from corners. They've got size in the box. They've got fantastic ball players, Idah, etc. So yeah, I think Celtic's set pieces have been a wonderful improvement from last year compared to this year.
All right, we'll just jump on the second goal after 26 minutes. Luke McCowan gets on the score sheet. I'm going to miss out. We had a raft of chances. We could be here all night talking about all the chances we had. So we'll just talk about the goals. So the second goal, Luke McCowan, as you mentioned, a really nice ping ball from Liam Scales. McCowan makes a great run beyond the defence, gets on the end of the ball, gets a good shot away, gets the aid of a deflection, which he's entitled to get because he's done all the hard work. And the ball's in the back of the net. So, David, great goal from Luke McCowan.
Yeah, great goal, great performance. 1 goal, 3 assists. I think this comes back to what we talked about in terms of the strength and depth. I also thought it was interesting with McCowan in the post-match interviews. I mean, he must be getting sick of being patronised. I mean, every time someone speaks to him after the game, it's like, "Oh, wee man, you're so lucky, living the dream, blah, blah, blah." He's there because he deserves it.
Yep.
And he turns around and he says, like, there's no point in having a petted lip. And he answers all the questions very professionally, but at some point somebody needs to say, "Look, shut it."
Yeah.
He's here for valid reasons. We're not playing him out of sentimentality. But one of the things in terms of how do you keep McCowan happy, how do you keep Hatate? For me, the most important one is how do you keep Bernardo happy? But the other thing is that because we've got 4 such strong midfielders, my concern is that when it comes to January, that we decide not to go for Lennon Miller, because I think that this time next year we'll have a different midfield. And I think for £4 million, we've got a player there that can quite seamlessly fit into, to what we're looking for. Let's not go down the John McGinn, scenario, wasting great potential for a couple of £100,000. I know I've diverted massively from the how good the second goal was, but I thought I'd just get my tuppence in. Sorry, lads.
No, that's what we do here. We go all over the place. If you're here for coherent conversation, you came to the wrong place. Why don't we chat about that then, about the midfield? Lennon Miller. The chat is that Celtic are in the driver's seat to sign him for around about the 5 million mark, with a potential to loan him out to Motherwell for the rest of the season. David, I take it you wouldn't be in favour of loaning him out. You'd bring him in just now?
No, I would loan him back. I would definitely loan him back in January. I think at this stage, I would want to keep our 4 midfielders, assuming they're all fit, of course. Obviously, if there's any injuries, then we would bring them straight in. But I would have him playing for Motherwell, playing week in, week out, because he won't get that from January this season. But I do think that this time next season, we're looking at possibly quite a different midfield. I mean, someone's going to go for the likes of, Hatate or Bernardo could be our next 20 million, along with Kuhn, etc. So I just think that for £4-5 million pounds, we've got £100 million in the bank. It's not a gamble for me.
Yeah, I think it's going to be hard to hold on to Kuhn in particular next year, given his performances, especially in the Champions League. I think he'll be a hot target for some of the bigger clubs in terms of their standing in Europe. So yeah, we have to think forward, and Lennon Miller would be a safe bet. I agree with David completely. It's not a gamble given the resources Celtic currently have, but the money they've got in the bank. So yeah, for me, it's a no-brainer. Luke McKeown's goal was fantastic. I was particularly delighted for him. You're right about him being patronised. I think it's because he's homegrown. And there's a sense that he's meant to feel lucky that he's playing in such an illustrious squad that Celtic have right now. It's a wonderful story. Luke McKeown, he's a throwback to the time when Celtic produced players from the lower clubs in Scotland, Ayr United, etc., Partick Thistle. So, I think Luke McKeown is one to watch for the future. I think he's got a lot of potential for improvement, and I think he's relishing being at Celtic, but not, as David says, feeling that he doesn't belong there or he's lucky to be there. But he understands his worth, and he's improving in his confidence. And I saw that against Ross County on Saturday. It was fantastic, I thought, in every aspect of his game.
Yeah, I think McKeown can count himself really unlucky, I think, because he didn't play a single minute in the previous 2 games for Celtic, including the Champions League game against Bruges. And I felt that was a mistake from Rodgers. I think probably the last 10 minutes of the Bruges game, we could have done with McKeown's energy on there. I think Hatate, by the 75th or 80th minute against Bruges, was absolutely knackered, and he was clearly blowing.
Just on that, Stephen, it would have been good for McKeown to get that game time, at least 10 minutes, 50 minutes against Brugge, with a view to playing him against Ross County on Saturday.
So I was watching the game. I was screaming at the TV, get McKeown on. I thought that would have been a move that would give us a little bit of extra impetus going into the last 5-10 minutes of that game. And one thing that particularly annoyed me was we got a corner. Talking about delivery from corners, we got a corner with about 30 seconds to go in injury time, and didn't put it into the box, and we just fannied around with a short corner and ended up losing possession. So that was an annoying moment, but. I think McKeown could count himself really unlucky, and he was a really star performer in the game. All right, we'll jump forward to the 35th minute, and Paulo Bernardo gets himself on the score sheet. Another guy who's been in and out of the team. I think it was some really good play from Idah in this one to get to the byline, I think, and he gets it back into Bernardo, who does a little turn, turns the defender inside out and picks out the far corner. So, David, what do you reckon about that goal?
Yeah, another great team goal. Idah doing what he does best. Doing his little cutback like he did, was it 2 games ago in the league? Where his pace, he set out, stripped the guy, and then did quite a deft turn and laid it on a plate. I think also Bernardo showed a lot of composure. I think if it had been the other way around, Bernardo passing to Idah, we probably wouldn't have seen the same level of composure there. I thought he took it and then he just placed it in the corner. He's a fantastic player. I think is he just turned 23? Mm-hmm. I mean, Benfica must have some fantastic squad, because getting him on loan and then getting him on a permanent deal, I think is fantastic. And for me, he's the unluckiest out of all of them, not to be in the first 11. I think if Engels had been bought for $1 million instead of 11 million, I think there's a good chance Bernardo would have started every game. And saying that, I do think that there's scope for resting McGregor a couple of times. But he played great, obviously, as well.
Who would you give the captain's armband to in the event of McGregor being rested?
Carter Vickers.
Okay, interesting.
It's either Carter Vickers or Johnson in it that's been getting the armband recently.
Yeah. But I think the reason not to rest McGregor is based on there's a huge amount of trust in McGregor within the squad. He's like Mr. Celtic. He's like the Tommy Burns of today. He's the guy that Rodgers relies on, maybe in the dressing room, etc., etc. So I see McGregor as a future coach at Celtic. That's the level of trust and standing he has under Rodgers and as he had under Postecoglou. So, but he's only human. Would you have rested McGregor for the Ross County game? Is the really question I'm asking, David and Stephen. Would you have rested him?
I would have. Yeah, I would have.
Yeah, I think I probably would have as well. But the reason probably we didn't arrived in the 36th minute where he's laced in an absolute cracker from well outside the box, and it's becoming fairly standard for him now to score these absolute worldies. I think that's his third or his fourth one he scored this season. And I think this one for me was the best of the lot in terms of how cleanly he struck it. So what do you reckon, John?
I've never seen him play with more confidence. He's relishing playing under Rodgers and under Rodgers' system and within that team and within that squad. He's tremendously improved. He looks to me like a guy who spent an extra half hour on the training pitch after the official training is over to practice his shots. He's turned into a wonderfully competent and rhythmic, forward-thinking midfield player. And that goal was just testament to that. He's a wonderful player. I think he's close to being world class, which is huge given where we are in the Scottish football landscape at this point in time. I just think that I would have rested him with a view to the Aberdeen game. That's a huge game coming up. So yeah, we'll see how he responds to the Ross County result. He would have taken huge confidence from that result. But I just think, I do see the case that he could have been rested against Ross County after the Brugge match.
Yeah.
David, do you think Calmack's reaping the benefits of hanging up his international boots for Scotland? Do you think the rest during international breaks, we've had one recently, is doing him any good?
Yeah, I was going to say that. I think for me that's been quite instrumental. Is able to rest. I mean, this is a guy who, over a number of years, out of the top 5 or 6 divisions, if you count Scotland, played the most number of minutes every season consistently. So I think any chance that you can give him a rest without having to actually drop him, I think we should be taking that. So I think it's fantastic from a Celtic point of view that he has been rested. I think also he takes a lot of stick needlessly from the likes of Souness, etc. So I don't think it's a bad thing for him to be dropping out of or to be leaving Scotland behind. I agree that I think he's probably playing his best football. And I think that it's also due to the quality of the people around him.
Yeah.
I think in the past it's been a little bit like, I'm not comparing him to McStay. McStay is my favourite all-time player, but for me, McStay was covering for so many weaknesses everywhere else on the park. And I think now when we've got Callum, who he can trust his teammates, especially in midfield, to a greater extent. That allows him to get forward more. I mean, I can remember in the Scottish Cup final, was it 5-6 years ago, when he did the half volley into the top corner. I mean, he's always had that potential for strong, accurate shooting, and I agree that his goal on Saturday was top draw. I marginally preferred Idah's, to be honest, given that he touched it and controlled it and sort of moved it past the man in one movement before scoring. But McGregor's goal was superb.
What do you think of McGregor defensively? Do you think he's improved there? Do you think he needs to improve defensively? David?
I personally think that I've said this a few times on the show that I think if we had a child-eating big number 6 central sort of defensive midfielder, I think we could really take us to the next level.
We need a Roy Aitken. We need a Roy Aitken, in my view.
Yeah, a Roy Aitken, a Patrick Vieira, someone at that sort of,
can disrupt the opposition.
Yeah. I actually think, for me, I could see Bernardo being more of a sort of number 6 than McGregor. That allows McGregor to move forward. But I think the 3 midfielders we've got, I think, are kind of interchangeable in how they play. But for me, none of them are real defensive midfielders.
No, that to me is a lacuna in the team.
Yeah, that's the thing that always is brought up with McGregor, isn't it? About playing in Europe as a 6, but whether he's the defensive nous to play that role in Europe. And I must admit, I think particularly the first 45 minutes against Bruges, he kind of struggled. But that's, he wasn't alone in that department. Pretty much the whole team struggled that first 45 minutes. So it would be interesting to see who was rotated into McGregor's position if he did indeed get a rest. And he will need a rest at some point this season, whether that's forced or unforced. And it'll be interesting to see who comes in. So who do you think, David, you would bring in to replace McGregor?
So for me, it's in terms of the people we have just now, I would have Bernardo swapping for McGregor. I would see McCowan slotting in for Engels. Hatate for me is he adds so much to the team that. But I would say if we were just looking at the most like for like, I would say swap McGregor for Bernardo, and maybe Engels for McCowan.
McCowan for Engels, you mean? Sorry.
Yes, sorry, yes.
I agree totally. I think Bernardo's been underused. I think you made a great point and a salient point, David, about reasoning being the pressure because of the financial disparity between what he cost. Maybe that has a bearing on Rodgers' decision making when it comes to Bernardo, or maybe he thinks Bernardo still needs a bit more experience and he's a bit young to handle the pressure. But I do agree. I think he's the player that needs to really be looked after going forward, because he's a wonderful, he's a great player. He's a product of that wonderful academy, Porto. I think Bernardo for McGregor would be a straight swap for me in the middle in the midfield.
So I've just had a comment up there from Smell the Glove, who mentions that Arne Engels played number 6 when he played for Augsburg in Germany. Any of you would like to see Engels getting a crack there?
Not for me.
Go ahead.
No, just to say not for me. I think for me he seems to be more of a box-to-box player. Sort of I think, as I say, for me, the 3 midfielders we've got are pretty similar, like for like, that can all replace each other, but we don't have a real number 6. Is my kind of main concern. Yeah, I mean, yes, he has played it, and yes, I'm sure we can, but I think out of the midfielders we have, I think that Bernardo is more suited to that role, just on what I've seen.
If I'm being critical, I worry certainly against European teams. Celtic are still too easy to open up at the back. Players can play between the lines. We rely too much on Kasper Schmeichel. So we do need a number 6, a solid number 6 who has positional intelligence and discipline to stay in position and to see his role as disrupting the opposition's rhythm going forward. I love the possession football ethos. Obviously, that's in Celtic's DNA. But there comes a time where you have to learn to try and win ugly, have the ability to win ugly. And that's when you need a strong number 6 who plays as a traditional number 6. So I think that's one position where Celtic are lacking right now. And maybe in the January transfer window, that could be something that needs to be rectified.
All right, well, we mentioned briefly there Adam Idah's goal in the 40th minute. A really good strike, arguably the best of the lot, John. So what did you think about Adam Idah's contribution?
Wonderful, great goal. I like him a lot. I like his spirit. I like his personality. I like his presence on the pitch. Clinical finish. Again, he's another player that Rodgers will have to manage well, because he's not obviously an automatic first pick. So we'll see what happens. We don't know what's going on in the training pitch. We'll see what injuries come to the fore in the Christmas period. But Adam Idah, to me, is a wonderful player, and I think he's a great potential Celtic star going forward. Needs a wee bit more experience for me at times. I think he plays with tremendous flair, but sometimes I think on possession he's a bit questionable. But great on Saturday. Wonderful performance.
David, do you think some of the criticism that's been aimed at Adam Idah this year is more due to the price we paid for him? Much like Engels, he's feeling the strain of costing £9 million, which isn't his fault really. I think I agree with John. I think he did a great game at the weekend, and I'm quite happy with how he's going.
Yeah, I think that. I've been a bit critical of him on this show a couple of times. I think he's got a lot of potential. My only concern has been that quite a few times his first touch has been pretty poor. But in saying that, I felt on Saturday his touch was very good. I think he's a good example of a confidence player. You give him, if he gets a good start to the game, he tends to sort of build on that. But I was looking, and since he joined in 2024, I was looking here. He's played in 35 games. He started in 12, and he scored 16 goals. He's had a couple of assists. So if you look at the sort of minutes per goal ratio, etc., he's beaten Kyogo. So I think he provides a different challenge for defenders. And I think also the game where he started a couple of weeks ago, where he pretty much got his nose broken after about 10 minutes. That had to have an impact on him playing. So no, I agree with both of you. I think he's got great potential. He's working under the best coach arguably in Britain, with Rodgers. So I think that we all love him. We all want him to do well. And for me, as long as he's happy at the moment being that sort of impact sub, and bringing him on or letting him start against Hibs on Saturday, for example, and these kind of games.
Yeah.
I wouldn't start him against Aberdeen. As I say, for me, I would want our strongest 11, and he isn't part of the strongest 11 yet for me.
Good points.
Yeah, we'll probably just gloss over the second half for the interest of time, but I might just grab your thoughts on how that went. Do you think we took the foot off the gas a bit in the second half, John? Because being 5-0 up at half time, you're maybe looking at a potential double figures score. Do you think we sort of just managed the game from there? We did miss a lot of chances second half, and I think the Ross County keeper, the substitute keeper who came on, had a really good game. We won particular magnificent save from an Idah shot.
The one thing I took away from the game against Ross County was the crowd was unnaturally subdued. It was almost the level of expectation. This is only Ross County. We should beat them. We should trounce them. And again, it goes down to the point where we have an embarrassment of riches. We're playing fairly well in the Champions League. We're providing some excitement, spills and thrills there. And then you come down to play a Ross County at home at Celtic Park. It's a difficult transition to make for the team. Who knows if Rodgers at the half-time said, look, like you just mentioned, take the feet off the gas, just coast this, just focus on game management, try and avoid injuries, etc. So that's a valid point. Based on the first half performance, it did look like two different teams, first half, second half. But I don't blame Celtic for that. I don't blame Rodgers for that. I just think it's just the ecosystem in which Celtic exists in Scottish football. We are a European club, but we're playing in a lesser league. We have to be honest about that. Rangers are in a bad place. There's no real serious competition at this juncture, though I'm not going to get too complacent. I do think we're 5 points ahead. If we play Aberdeen and beat them at Pittodrie, it's looking really, really difficult to suggest that Celtic are going to lose the league. So it's a difficult challenge for Celtic. You know, like unlike most of the other European teams that we're playing, they play in a league where they're expected to win every single week. And it would have been an embarrassment for Scottish football if Celtic had taken Ross County and got to like 7-8 goals. I think it would have been bad for Scottish football to see that. So yeah, I think Rodgers is a great manager in the sense that he understands the ecosystem in which Celtic exists, and that almost dual identity as a European club that can pull out great results against fairly very good teams like RB Leipzig, but having to play the Ross Counties in the league the following in the next few days. So I don't know how we square that circle. It's always been a challenge with Celtic managers, and it's one that I think Rodgers at this juncture is handling commendably well.
Yeah, we might talk quickly about the crowd, which you're right, John. It was very subdued, and there also was an awful lot of empty seats there as well in the game. I just want to mention something I mentioned at the top of the show there. There was a caller to Super Scoreboard after the game who had said himself and his dad had left the game at half-time at 5-0 to Celtic because they were bored. And it was just boring beating the likes of Ross County. Now, I'm pretty sure that guy wasn't a genuine caller and talking a bit of nonsense. But I might ask you, David, does it ever get, you know what, we're hammering everyone at the moment, everything's going well. Do you ever get bored with beating teams in Scotland?
I'm at a certain age where I remember the bad old days, you know, during their 9 in a row, where I remember we were playing the last game of the season against Hibs. We needed to beat them to get fourth in the league to get to Europe, and they beat us. You know, there was, the bad old days were just horrific, and I think, there's a lot of fans out there who've never known anything else except Celtic dominance.
By the way, I remember going to Pittodrie in the mid-80s, and if you got a draw, you were happy when Alex Fergus was Aberdeen. I remember that distinctly. So you're right.
I mean, Rangers were an irrelevance then, like they hopefully are going to be for the next few years. Aberdeen and Dundee United were our big threats, and those were the times that we had to have. I mean, I can remember also John Barnes. His first few games. I can remember people saying, "Oh, this is too easy. It's we're battering these teams, and people are going to turn off." But I've been living overseas for the last sort of 35 years, and I've only been to about 20 games in that time at Celtic Park. I was lucky enough to get to quite a few of the European games, but I would take every single chance to go and see Celtic. And the idea that any proper fan is going to leave at half-time when you're 5-0 up is utter nonsense. The only thing I would say just briefly in terms of the second half, I think that on another day, Idah would have scored 3 or 4 goals. His confidence was up. He took them well. We hit the bar 3 times. I think also without getting into the sort of the paranoid Celtic club, I felt that the referee was their best player. Time and time again, he seemed to be the sort of last man blocking passes, or he was giving them quite a lot of basic fouls, I think, to kind of slow down the games. So I don't think it was necessarily that we were downing tools at 5-0. As I say, I think quite easily, Idah could have scored 3 or 4, and but overall, as I say, I think that you don't want to be in a situation where you're 7 or 8 up, and maybe one of them decides just to throw in a red card, just to do an ankle breaker or whatever. So again, I would agree with both of you that it was well managed situation by Rodgers. Also bringing in all the the reserve players, Yang, Ralston, etc.
Yep. Good stuff.
Yeah, you're 100% right there, David. No one, John as well, no one who was there, we'll go all Celtic da now, but no one who was there in the 1990s will ever get bored of winning games and winning trophies for that matter. We've all got our own personal low points at that particular time. I think mine was losing 5-1 to Dundee at Dens Park during the 90s, which was horrific. But you savour every win, and every single time the ball hits the net for Celtic, I celebrate it just as much for every single goal. I agree with both. He's 100% there.
And going back to the second half, they have to worry about injuries. By the second half, they're winning comfortably. They're thinking about the next game. That's natural. Even a player on the pitch be thinking, okay, we've won this. Unless something disastrous happens, we're full in control. I've got to preserve myself for the next game, which is a huge game against Aberdeen. And then they're thinking Champions League. So I don't blame the players. I think David's right. I don't necessarily. Yeah, the down in tools mentality is game management for me. You know, the professional clubs, but fans leaving at half time because they're bored, they're not fans. Because guys like yourselves, you're in Australia, Stephen, David's in Bangkok, Celtic's got a huge diaspora, they would be privileged to be there at any time, you know, Celtic winning 5-0, watching every Celtic game and watching every Celtic goal at Celtic Park at Paradise. So that was a poor comment made by your caller there. Celtic in name only, you know, that they do exist, unfortunately, Celtic fans.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I think, you know, there is a seam of Celtic fans running through the club there who, as David, I think, mentioned earlier, who've only known success.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think the fact that we're filling our stadium every week, you know, there is going to be that element there. But yeah, let's move on from that. We'll move on from the game and we'll look ahead to this Wednesday night. So we're up at Pittodrie on Wednesday night, which is not great at this time of the year. I'm sure it's going to be absolutely Baltic up there. And we're playing an Aberdeen team who sits second in the league. They dropped points in the weekend to Hearts, dropped points for the second week in a row, which leaves them 4 points behind us, having played a game more. So I think a couple of weeks ago, we were looking at this game as a potentially title-defining game. David, do you think Aberdeen's form since then has made it like a bit less of a big game, if you know what I mean?
No, for me, this is Aberdeen. For me, are our biggest challengers. Yeah. You know, they've got a better squad than Rangers, in my opinion. They've got a better manager. It's a very tough ground to go to the best of times. You know, I think we need to take this professionally. I think we need to show them respect. I would be quite worried if we started the same 11 that we did with Ross County. For me, it's about showing them the respect. They're not playing that well just now. I mean, they dropped points against Hibs, Hearts, I think St Mirren. You know, so I think this is an opportunity for us. I still think they've got enough to finish second relatively comfortably. You know, I've said I think, you know, I could see us being 20 points clear by January, ahead of Rangers. So, like, you know, I would want us to play our strongest team, get the job done by half time, and then if we need to bring on other people, then do that. In terms of who our best team is, you know, I think that's maybe another issue because, you know, McCowan having 3 assists and a goal, I think Bernardo's quite undroppable. McGregor is difficult to drop. So, you know, who gets dropped from, you know, Bernardo, Hatate? I think Engels could come back in, but I don't see it, to be honest. I think he would be good.
David, would you keep Liam Scales in the team for Aberdeen?
No. For me, the reason I wouldn't do that is that if you remember the goal in when they got their first goal in the league, and it was a through ball. It was a good through ball, but Scales lack a pace. And I think Rodgers mentioned that in the post-match interview that when it got to the semi-final, the reason that he played trusty was because he had that pace. And I think it was showing respect for the Aberdeen team. As I say, I think against the majority of teams, Scales is a brilliant option, and I was no problem at all. But for me at this moment, with Trusty's pace, I would want him and Carter Vickers as my central pairing.
Well,
let's just go through the team and see how we think it's going to look. So I take it we're all agreed on Casper Schmeichel in goal. So we'll move on to the back four. So David, you reckon Trusty and CCV?
Yes.
How about I think Alistair Johnson also picks himself. How about the left back? Are we going Taylor or Valle?
Valle.
I would go Taylor. I like Taylor going forward. I think he's got a better understanding with the centre backs than Valle at this point. And yeah, I would prefer Taylor in terms of his cohesion with the rest of the back, the defence, back four.
So you're going Johnson, CCV, Scales, and Taylor, John?
Yes. I like Scales. The reason I like Scales is I like the physicality. I think in the opposition box he's a greater threat, which is important. I think counterintuitively, this game against Aberdeen is a bigger game for Aberdeen than it is for Celtic because they are behind with one less game played. So I think the manager will rally the team for this game. Their home crowd will be up for it. So I think Celtic really need to be up for it to combat that psychological disparity. Aberdeen, this is Aberdeen's make or break game for me this season. And so with that in mind, I do agree with David. We need to play our strongest side, but maybe have a few disagreements about what the strongest side looks like. It's hard now at this stage because they have so many games back to back that you can't really make any judgment in training, because training at this stage with so many games back to back is about ticking over. It's not about playing, it's not about fully fledged training and seeing how the players perform. It's about ticking over, just keeping them injury free, recovering from previous games. So yeah, I think this is a bigger game for Aberdeen than it is for Celtic for the reasons I've mentioned. So Celtic have to be careful about that. This will be Aberdeen's balls to the wall performance to try and overcome the lead that Celtic has established over them and the momentum that Celtic have gained over their past few performances when it comes to the league.
So how about the midfield, David? So we're talking, I mean, who knows what our strongest midfield is just now. You would have said up to this week that Engels would probably be part of that, but maybe not so much now. So who's your midfield three?
Yeah, so you flashed up the team of Monty. I would agree with his starting 11. McGregor for me is he's in great form. I think it's unfortunate for McCowan. I think he could come in. I think maybe he could rest. Maybe if Hatate's been shown signs of fatigue after all the travelling, back and forward from Japan over the last couple of months, playing the full 90 minutes against Bruges. I just think Hatate is such an important player that when you've got Bernardo and you've got McGregor as the sort of belts and braces of the defence, he provides that creativity that, and especially the link-up play that he has with Kyogo. People don't see those runs quite as easily, in my opinion, as Hatate. So for me, I'd go with Monty's team. McGregor, Hatate, and Bernardo.
Yeah, Bernardo looks very fresh to me right now. I would play him. I like that team by Monty. McGregor picks himself in midfield. So yeah, I like that team. I would go with that team. That's a fantastic team against Aberdeen, I think, given where we are.
I think the only thing I would say about Monty's team there is, I'll put it up again there, he's got Taylor and Valle playing there though, so I'm assuming that's a mistake. So yeah. I don't know, do you mean Taylor? Do you mean Scales or Trusty? Maybe you can let us know, Monty, in the comments. So I take it the wide players pick themselves, Idah and Kuhn on the other side. Just quickly, John, Kyogo or Idah up front?
Idah, definitely for me. I think he's an informed player. I think he's the most informed forward in British football, up there with Salah at Liverpool. I think he's just tremendous. He's on fire. He's absolutely on fire. No defence can handle him, European or domestic. So I would have him up front against. This is a huge game for Celtic for the reasons that I've adumbrated, because it's a bigger game for Aberdeen as for Celtic, so they need him up there. I think you back him to score in every single game based on the form he's in right now.
David, yourself up front.
Hugo every time. I think for me, Idah's great as a impact sub. I mean, I think I've already mentioned the number of goals per minutes, etc. I think in the 12 games he started, he scored 6, which again is pretty good. I think that Kyogo misses lots and lots of chances. For me, Kyogo does a lot more than just score goals, whereas for me, it's kind of the opposite for Idah, that Idah's more of a goal-scoring guy just now. I think when he learns to hold the ball up, I think under Rodgers, he's going to coach him into a real, potentially excellent player. I think you'll see a much stronger side of him this year and, in the years to come. But for me personally, Kyogo is our number one striker. But we could easily go for Idah and it wouldn't necessarily, weaken us, a great amount. But for me, Kyogo every day just now until, we see an improvement in Idah's control.
And what's your score prediction, John?
2-0 or 3-1 for Celtic.
David?
4-1 Celtic.
Okay, so we're both predicting fairly comfortable wins for Celtic. Just before we go, we're getting quite close to the end of the show. What do you think it means if we beat Aberdeen? Are we calling the league at this early stage? Being 7 points, we would then be 7 points ahead with a game less played, potentially 10 points if we win our game in hand. Do you think the league's done and dusted, David?
The league's been done for months. The league's been done for at least 6 weeks. I mentioned before, I think this is the worst Rangers team in a generation. That's them won 2 away games out of 6. I don't watch their games, unless they're playing us really. But to get a result away from home with relying on our own goal against St Johnstone, I think they're averaging a goal a game in away games. And if we take out the anomaly of the 6-0 against North County, even at home they've been fairly pedestrian. So for me, the league's been finished for a long time. And as I say, I wouldn't be surprised if we're 15, 20 points clear by January.
I don't think we can overlook the League Cup final in terms of the bearing on the league. I know that sounds a little bit of a contradiction in terms. I think for Aberdeen, as I've said, that this is their biggest game of the season, and the League Cup final will be Rangers' biggest game. So confidence is a key part in any team's season. I think Celtic are playing with an imperiousness and a majesty that I've not seen in many a season, even under Postecoglou. But I don't think we can look at one game this period. I think we have to look at the whole period in its entity in terms of the European Champions League against Zagreb coming up to maintain the confidence to go forward. Injuries could be a factor, but in terms of the squad depth, I would tend to agree with David that it's looking very comfortable for Celtic right now. But this is a incredibly challenging period for the team and for the backroom staff and the coaching staff in terms of managing injuries and so on and so forth. So the Aberdeen game is a huge signpost. But I think, as I said, paradoxically, the League Cup final against Rangers on the 15th of December is another major game. It will hammer a nail in the coffin of Rangers' demise, which will be a wonderful thing. But it could also give them a sense of resurgency if it goes wrong. So, yeah, it's all about managing the players, making sure that complacency doesn't seep in to their consciousness and keeping things going forward. And the squad rotation will be key in that. And up to now, Rodgers and Kennedy have played a wonderful role in making that an effective aspect of Celtic's success.
Say that in terms of the first 13 games that were played in the league, if you look at that with comparing to the Invincible season, it's the same number of points. We've scored more goals, we've conceded fewer goals. So I think if we look at where we are, how strong we are, I mean, arguably, stronger than the team in the squad we had in the Invincible season. Compare that to how weak the Huns are, and and the other teams in the league. I really think it's in our hands. We've got the strength and depth in terms of our squad, and I'd be astonished if we don't win the league by an absolute country mile.
Yeah, funnily enough, I've just got that graphic here actually that I pulled off of Twitter today, and it's a comparison between the Invincible season and this one. So Invincible season, I don't know if you can see that or if it's too small, but in the Invincible season, we played after 13 games, 12 wins, 1 draw, 37 points, goals for 39, goals against 11, goal difference plus 28, clean sheet 6. This season, played 13, won 12, drawn 1, points 37, goals for 40, goals against 4, goal difference plus 36, so clean sheets 10. So certainly that compares very favourably. Obviously, we're on the same points, but we've scored more and conceded less. So it is a good comparison to make, isn't it, John?
Wonderful comparison. I just think I go back to your point about the Celtic fan who said that he left at half time against Ross County because he was bored. I'm actually disgusted by that, actually. I think when you have such a great team playing such great football, and if you are a real Celtic fan, not Celtic in name only, you'll relish this time, because who knows when it will end. No successful team is eternally successful, and no unsuccessful team is eternally unsuccessful. And like David, I remember the dark days in the 90s when we were struggling, and it told in terms of the clubs, the atmosphere around the club, in terms of how the fans were, in terms of how Celtic standing in Europe. Now we're up there. We're respected. The stadium's respected. The fans are respected. I think Celtic Park has become a bit of a citadel, even for European teams. They all talk about the atmosphere, the European nights. We shouldn't take all this stuff for granted. That's the point I'm making. So, yeah, it's a great comparison. And I think this is on course to being one of the best Celtic teams in Celtic seasons that I can remember. And that's brilliant.
Yeah, that's all good stuff. I probably call it just there. We're just over the hour mark. So thanks very much, John. Thanks very much, David, for joining me tonight. It's been great fun. It's been great having both of you on. And thanks very much to everybody who joined us in the comments. We'll be back on Thursday night with Paul Massey. I think he'll be hosting the show, and we'll be talking about the Aberdeen game, hopefully discussing another thumping for them. And we'll be looking ahead to the Hibs game on the weekend. So thanks, guys, and thanks everyone who watched. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you all down the road.
Hail, hail. Brilliant. Cheers.